He scores! We're going into overtime. I'll tell you, Duncan has been great in the clutch all. It's anybody's game at this point. This could be an MVP season.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Welcome to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller. My special guest today, Lesley Greenwood. She's a foster care adoption caseworker for Job and Family Services and a co-worker.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm just enjoying the weather outside is nice.
Goodness.
It's going to be, what, 70 next week? So
The rumor on the street.
yeah, we're having a good time. You doing okay? Family doing well? And
Everybody's doing well. We're still kicking. Everybody's ready for spring.
Yeah.
We're ready.
yeah. Now you have one child, right?
I have a child, yes, a
Who-
son.
5, 6?
He's 4.5.
I was close.
You were close.
Yeah.
And he is excited for spring. He got his
Good.
scooter out last weekend and his bike, so he's ready.
Fantastic.
Yes.
That's good. You've been working with children for a long, long time, and as a caseworker, you get to see some of the unpleasant things that
That's
go
right.
on. And I know you have some stats you want to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about some special events coming up. Wear Blue to Work, Candlelight Walk, and
Correct.
Circus Night coming up.
Correct.
But let's talk a little bit about just some general information about children in Fairfield County.
In Fairfield County. Well, we're happy to be here because April is Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. So the reason we're having a lot of these activities are because we're just trying to help our community and raise some awareness about kids that are in need due to the trauma of abuse and neglect. So the events that you brought up, Circus Night, Candlelight Walk, we also have some events at local libraries, Wear Blue to Work, a state level initiative and campaign to raise awareness for child abuse and neglect prevention. We thought maybe we should be giving the community a little bit more information. What are we looking at on an annual basis? So kind of pulling out some stats that you'll probably see through the next month at our different events are things just kind of highlighting what it was like in 2012. So for example, during the entire year of 2012, Protective Services received nearly 4,000 referrals of abuse and neglect.
Wow, 4,000?
And we completed nearly 150 kinship assessments during 2012, meaning family members, not necessarily family. The highest number is blood relation or kin, but there is also non-related kin, so like a school bus driver or a daycare provider, someone who steps up to the
Okay.
plate and says, I have a relationship with this child, and before this child enters any kind of foster home or protective placement, I would like to be an option for this child to come be with me. So we completed nearly 150 kinship assessments in 2012. So that just really shows that also a state level initiative is to have more children placed in kinship care, because we see statistically foster care is not the answer, although it's necessary at times. We see a higher likelihood of reunification if we can keep kids with families.
Now, is it harder to get kinship or foster parents, or is it?
That's a tough one, because, kinship means that someone has to come to the table and say, hey, Protective Services Agency, I want to work with you even though my family is going through this difficult time. So sometimes it can be hard, especially because we see the greatest number of kinship providers being grandmas and grandpas. So that means that they need to be able to stand strong while mom and dad might not be making the best choices so that they can protect their grandkids. That's hard for anybody. That's a tough situation for any family to be in. But with regard to foster care, it's definitely, we're seeing the numbers increase in the inquiries we receive, but people actually getting to the end of the process, you know, we always could use more foster parents. Always, always, always.
If somebody wants to volunteer, phone numbers they can contact, or
740-653-4060 will get you to an automated system. And then I would ask to speak to someone in the foster care and adoption department. There's only 5 of us, so even if you don't get a live body, you can be routed to our foster care and adoption cover line, and that's checked daily by someone in our unit. So we're a little bit mighty. There's 5 of us and a supervisor, so you'll get to someone, whether it be that day, but of course within that next few business days.
one of the, I guess, questions I get a lot from people is, can I report something anonymously?
Yes.
My next door neighbor, you know, the little boy has whatever. So
Yes, you can always report anonymously. I get on my little soapbox when I tell people about that, though. I say, but remember, if I'm just Lesley, Susie, social worker, taking down your information when I'm talking to you on the phone, and you say your address is 135, and I write down 123, and you've reported anonymously, I have no way to check the information that you're giving me. What I like to tell people, general population as well as mandated reporters, folks required by law to report child abuse and neglect. My agency, myself, we're not permitted to tell who the reporter is to the folks when and if it's a screened-in report. Now, that being said, if it's a school official that calls and your kid's been in school all day and you get a call before your kid comes home from school from Child Protective Services, it kind of points to probably someone at the school. But we are mandated to not permit to tell who the referral source is. That is against the law for us to report to the person who the referral source
so
is.
it's just a hypothetical situation. Teacher notices there's a bruise on little Johnny's arm and asks Johnny, he says, oh, it's nothing. And that teacher does call in and say, I think you need to check into that. That's
protected.
Okay.
Yes, protected. What we tell mandated reporters, and they're required to take a certain amount
Now, when
of
you say
training.
mandated reporters, talk a little bit about that, because I'm not sure that everybody understands what. I know teachers. Okay.
School personnel, folks that work with children in different aspects, for example, clergy or someone at your church. Per the Ohio Revised Code, there's a very long list: medical professionals, attorneys, anybody with a faith affiliation, all sorts of folks that are required by law. Daycare providers, they're required to take a certain amount of training to know that they're mandated reporters. But I would say probably primarily we're looking at service providers like teachers, as well as counselors, therapists, those sorts of things. One of the stats that I wanted to share was almost 2,000 mandated reporters in 2012 shared concerns of abuse or neglect with protective services. I would say when you look at our statistics, probably our highest number of reporters are those mandated reporters. And then magically, when it's summertime and school's not in session anymore, we see a real decrease in calls. So it really goes to show that folks that are working with children on an everyday basis are the front line and are seeing kids often more than their family members are. So our mandated reporters are critically important to us providing services to our community.
You've been doing this a long time. The numbers, do they alarm you?
What alarms me are the numbers related to drug and alcohol abuse right now. I know I've been here a few times before, and over the last few years I feel like I'm a broken record, but the opiate problem in our community is out of control. Last year we screened in, meaning received a call of a concern, and it rose to the level of us being able to investigate. We screened in 47 drug-positive infants.
Infants?
Born positive.
Wow.
Yeah. And that number's just ticking up. I had some other stats that I wanted to share about that. Out of those 47 cases of kids born drug positive that we were able to screen in and investigate, 18 of those were because of opiates. And then when you look at it, from a bigger community perspective, we've started tracking caregivers and substance abuse. And last year alone in 2012, 691 of the cases we screened in were because of caregiver substance use and abuse. 691.
Wow.
And of that 691, 274 were because of opiates. It's attacking our community, and it doesn't, socioeconomic status doesn't seem to matter. People are not realizing how vulnerable they are to the substance, trying it once or twice, and you're done. So we're seeing tons and tons of kids coming into protective custody because of substance abuse. And along with the substance abuse, then we're seeing more pervasive neglect. Not that physical abuse isn't happening, but we're seeing kids, because families that are using, there's multiple families cohabitating together, drug users staying together, multiple children from different families, and no one's supervising. And when you're using illegal substances and you're hanging with that culture, there's bad people that are not caring about what happened to small children or what small children have access to. So we're seeing kids in horrific circumstances because of the pervasive neglect, because their parents are addicts and can't protect them.
I know, again, you've been doing this a long time, and you work with law enforcement officers and things like that. At some point, do you just want to pull your hair out and say, we've got to do, we really have to make an impact here someplace?
I just wish I could express to my community that whether you believe that an addiction is a disease or whether or not it's just something that you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get better and make a choice, the reality is that the kids that we are working with right now, the highest number of children, are in placement because their parents have an addiction. And what that does to a child, watching their parent suffer through an addiction, sickness, physical health problems because of the drug that they're choosing to utilize. A little kid doesn't understand that it's illegal or that it's dangerous. It's just a part of their life. And what that trauma then does to that child's ability to feel emotionally safe. So maybe it's not a black and blue mark, or maybe it's not a slap, but that sense of emotional safety that every child deserves is being robbed of them because of that pervasive neglect. And I just wish that I could help parents. I wish I could help families when we watch grandparents taking care of their grandkids while their adult children are suffering through this. It's horrible. It's just horrible, and I wish we had more services. We don't have enough services to be able to help folks get clean. Being an opiate addict is not something you just quit overnight. And we don't have enough services here locally to be able to serve the number of people that are being plagued by this in our community.
Do you think that people are not putting their head in the sand but are not understanding it?
I definitely
because you
think
talked
that.
about socioeconomic crossovers and things like that it's happening here in Lancaster, Ohio.
I think it's crazy because everybody thinks we're just little old Fairfield County, we're just Lancaster. And it's when you start looking at the stats across the United States, for some reason, we are this hotbed for opiates and for trafficking. And so consequently, the trickle-down effect then is that you see children being abused and neglected because of that lifestyle. So with April being Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month, I know it can sound like a very negative subject, and I know it's hard to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about those sorts of things because it's traumatic. But we also, as a community, should be able to stand up and say, we're going to try to make it different for those kids. We're going to try to make it a safer community. We're going to help those kids know that they're being supported. So I think it's just something that we're learning. No one would have fathomed that this is what we would be working with, that these are the numbers that we would see due to opiate addiction. And it's just about educating our caregivers of those children about what it feels like to be a child living with a parent with an addiction.
And I know we have some special events coming up.
We do.
That I know you have some other stats.
Yeah.
We'll get to in a bit, but there's 3 special events coming up.
Yeah.
One is Wear Blue to Work.
Yeah. I'm excited. April 10th is Wednesday, April 10th, Wear Blue to Work. Statewide campaign kind of initiative starting a few years ago during the month of April. And it's sort of a fun activity. If you can get your coworkers together, we would ask that you all wear some sort of blue and take a photo of yourself and then email it to us at wearblue@fcjfs.org. Now, if you email it to us, that means you're giving us permission to post
Right,
it.
okay.
So just an FYI about that. But we would love to be able to post on our website as well as other places. Everybody in Fairfield County saying, hey, we're standing up against child abuse and neglect, and we are aware that April is Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. So April 10th, we will be having Wear Blue to Work, as most 88 counties will be doing so. But we hope to kind of make it a little bit more fun this year and
Sure.
just raise awareness.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's cool. It's going to be fun.
And then we have Candlelight Walk and the Circus Night coming up also.
Yeah, I don't know how long JFS has been hosting Circus Night. I feel bad. I should probably know that. So Circus Night is a JFS event, a Job and Family Services event. So that starts at 5 o'clock in the parking lot at Fairfield County Job and Family Services. And that is just a fun, family-friendly event, free of charge.
I used to have a ringmaster outfit, but the outfit shrunk quite a bit, so I couldn't get into it anymore.
I'm
But
sorry.
it was a good time. I still go, but a lot of JFS
Tons of employees, yeah.
participate, and
Yeah.
there's animals, and there's
This guy comes with all sorts of reptiles. I know he has a title, and I feel bad. I don't know it off the top of my head, but he's come for a handful of years and brings alligators and lizards and all sorts of snakes and cool stuff for kids to hold, face painting, different kinds of activities and crafts, some free food and drink. So a fun, family-friendly, free event. And then we are so grateful that over the years, JFS has allowed us to kind of piggyback onto Circus Night with our candlelight walk or our candlelight vigil. So that will also be Thursday, April 25th, just like Circus Night, but it will be at the conclusion of Circus Night starting at 6:30. So we'll kind of rally there in the parking lot at JFS, and we walk from the JFS parking lot up to the gazebo at Zane Square. And there we will have a small, just sort of ceremony, a moment of silence for all of those kids in protective custody. I think at the close of February we had 153 kids in some type of protective custody.
Wow.
So just to honor those children that have been traumatized by abuse and neglect, and again to just raise community awareness, say thank you to our foster parents, say thank you to our kinship caregivers, our grandmas, our grandpas, our aunts and uncles, say thank you to our mandated reporters, just to say we appreciate all that you do in protecting our most vulnerable youth.
And the Candlelight Walk, again, starts at 6:30, weather permitting.
Correct.
But actually, be holding candles, and they have a little security,
Yeah.
What they call it, around the candle.
I think we're trying something a little bit different
Okay.
with the little kids this year. I think we're going to have them hold something like a popsicle stick, and it has a little flag on it that says protect,
Oh, okay.
so that little tinies aren't carrying candles,
Yeah.
because we know that can be
Oh, I know.
troublesome.
Yeah, troublesome, to say the least.
So there will be candles there, obviously, to walk with, but then also for our littler kids. In the past, we've had pinwheels or different things,
Right.
but this year I think we're going to have little popsicle sticks with a little blue ribbon, kind of signifying Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month.
I know there's some signs up around JFS, and actually some of the lighting on the building is going to
Yeah.
be blue.
Yeah.
So it's a big event. And usually there's, the last one I went to there were quite a few hundred people there. that
Over the
walked
years,
in.
it's really increased. The numbers have really increased, and I'm proud to say that our department has really wholeheartedly worked as a team to make this as a successful, easy for me to say, event as possible. And then with being permitted to piggyback with Circus Night, we receive the JFS support. We're not all working for the same cause in that building, but as a community, we're able to stand up and say, this is a night to just honor children that have been abused and neglected.
It's a great event. April 25th, Circus Night at 5 o'clock, and then Candlelight Walk at 6:30.
Yes, sir.
And April 10th is Wear Blue to Work.
Wear blue to work.
And we encourage everybody,
Yeah.
every business, every corporation, to have people wear blue to work.
That's
And,
right. That's right.
It'll be a great event. I
Yes.
know we talked a little bit earlier. You talked about stats, and from your standpoint, and again, you have 5 that you're working with. At some times, you get just overwhelmed and say, because you're actually not. Even though you're handling people in Fairfield County, you still get some referrals from outside of the counties.
Yeah. Well, my role there is, I'm not the front line. I obviously can take reports. I know how to do that, as I should as an employee with Protective Services, but I work primarily with foster care and adoption. So I see kids more at the end of the road after we've obtained permanent custody and we're working for forever placement. So I am not that front door person making those cold knocks and cold calls based on the horrific reports that we receive. Now, I've been there a little over 7 years, 8 years, and so there have been different times in my career where I've done different things. But I think what I always focus on, no matter how horrific some of the circumstances are, I feel very called and very led to protect vulnerable children. And although very sad things can happen, I've learned over and over again that children are extremely resilient. And children are amazing. And I see small miracles every single day at the office. There are days that it's hard. There are days that you feel like, well, geez, this is a pretty dark place. But I can't let that darkness overwhelm the call that I have to just help children know that they have value, that they are important, and that I am going to continue to work in my community to do what I know is best for children and families.
I know you talked earlier about training for individuals. Is that something people can call you, or do you set it out, or do you have to go, and how often is it?
I offer training 2 times a year at our agency for folks that are interested in becoming foster care and adoption parents. I just wrapped up, Tuesday night was my last class. They went for about a month, and I had close to 30 people that came through my classes. Yeah, it was a huge group. I had such a large group that I had to use the Liberty Center because we don't have a room big enough at our agency. So it was awesome. It was a really good group of people, and I'm just excited. I love meeting people at the beginning of the journey where they're really pumped up and excited and so into getting this process started and making a difference. I love meeting families. I love hearing their stories about what brought them to being foster and adoptive parents. It's so cool.
What are some of the requirements to be a foster parent? I mean, just
you do not have to be a 2-parent family. You can be single. You don't have to be married. You can be partners, and both of you then would have to obviously have a license. You wouldn't be considered a household of 2. You can have pets. Financial restrictions are such that you just need to provide verification that you would be able to, that it wouldn't be difficult for you to take on other children coming into your home. So there's not an actual amount of money that you have to make, and if you don't make that, you're not eligible. You don't have to own your own home. You can rent. There's lots of things that I think people believe would make them not be eligible. But please feel free to call us at 740-653-4060 and ask to speak with someone in the foster care and adoption department to inquire about getting more information about being a foster and adoptive parent.
There is an age limit? You have to be 21? Or
Yes,
okay.
yes. To be a licensed foster caregiver, yes. But that's a little bit different also with kinship providers. I don't want people to think that being a kinship provider versus being a licensed foster parent are 2 different things, obviously. So.
Time has just flown by. We just have a few minutes left. But advice to someone who wants to get in the social services field?
Have appropriate coping skills. have a good sense of humor. If you don't laugh, sometimes you're going to be weeping around too much. So we can't have that. You got to find the positive. Believe in a strength-based perspective, and believe that your call is valid. You know, most people that get involved in social services, we're not doing it for the hefty paycheck. So you know, believe in what you feel you're driven to do, and fight for whatever vulnerable population that is, whether it's elderly folk or whether it's folks that have been injured and need to find employment. I don't know what it is, but believe in that call and fight for those folks that don't have a voice.
Oh, well said.
Well, thanks.
Well said. What does Lesley do in her spare time when she's not at work all the time?
Lesley has a 4.5-year-old, and he is an awesome young man, so I enjoy being with him. And just recently, the last couple months, I've taken on going through family photos. So I'm pretending that I am talented in that arena. So I'm not going to call it scrapbooking because not my talent. Can't really cut a straight line. So I'm putting photos in photo albums, if that's a hobby.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
It's been fun.
My aunt is 78, 79, somewhere in there. And I went out to see her the other day, and she had a whole kitchen table full of photos. Some of these photos were, I mean, the old photos that I said, well, who's that? Oh, that's, Uncle Henry, and that's people that I had not even...
Write it down, write it down.
No, she was writing stuff on the back of the
Good.
pictures, and it was very interesting. It was to see some people that I heard people talk about, and I finally got to see some pictures. And
well, I really get into that. I love, knowing my story and who's who and where that photo was taken. So I was kind of given a lot of that stuff from my grandparents after they passed. So I have hordes of all these crazy old photos, and I just need to be more organized. So.
Well, I know you're organized.
Oh.
One more time, we've got Wear Blue to Work on April 10th.
April 10th, Wednesday, April 10th.
And then April 25th at 5 o'clock is Circus Night at the Job and Family Services
Yes,
building, weather permitting.
Yes, sir.
They'll have animals, food, drink, all sorts of. One
Fun.
time they had a juggler there. I don't know if he's still back. And then right after that is the candlelight walk going from Job and Family Services down to the gazebo downtown.
Yes, sir. And if you have questions about any of these events, you can always look at our agency website. We have all these flyers posted.
Leslie, we appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller. And remember, until we meet again, let's make a difference.
I can't say enough of how this center influenced me and the benefits that my wife got from it. I thought nobody can take care of her like me, and I knew I had to do something for my family. It's in their hearts that they want to provide the care for the people that deserve it here.